Welcome, magical ones, to our gorgeous episode on sisterhood. I am so excited to dive into this one, if I'm honest. Like, this is so dear to my heart, this topic, having had my own journey, having guided many women into sisterhood, having created a community of secret witches. And we're speaking to the episode title of Why Sisterhood is Vital in Our Healing, especially for a secret witch who may want to hide. And this was chosen, actually, very ironically, by those of you in our Secret Witch Sisterhood over on Facebook. And I really am so grateful to be speaking to this topic. I'm so appreciative of the women who've been in my sisterhood over the years. I'm grateful to the listeners of this podcast who are our sisterhood as well, you know, our Facebook community, and those women who also choose to go deeper into our group circles. There's just like such a deep, potent power in witches gathering. There's that quote, isn't there? Like, every time a woman gathers in circle, the world heals a little more, or something along those lines. And it really does feel like so incredibly true to me. And so it's so important to speak to this topic. And this is a topic really close to my heart. Like the power of being in women's circles for me over the years. And I'll be clear, when I first started going into women's circles, like, I wanted to hide. I remember like feeling choked, like literally my throat would not speak, like I wanted to share. And there have been many circles where I've been to where I've just not said a word, because there's that kind of fear that comes up as we go to like share something. And that really is what being in sisterhood is here to heal. And I'm going to share more about that because we're just kind of starting to tiptoe into this topic. But what I will say is that this work is vital. The work of sisterhood is vital. And yet, if you're resonating with the term secret witch, which I'm guessing you are because you're here listening to the Secret Witch Show, what that means is, for women who are resonating with secret witches, is the secret witch, by very nature of being who she is, aka wanting to be secret, will have a tendency to want to hide. And there's various reasons for that. Like, we can doubt ourselves, we can fear failure, we can fear judgment, but ultimately there's this sense in secret witches that like we're magical and we're drawn to magic, but there's something that stops us from fully embracing our witch. And I know there's so many of you out there because we're a top 10% podcast globally, so there's a lot of secret witches that are similar to you. So just to share, you're not as much of a weirdo as you think you are. Likewise for me, it's really nice to be surrounded by that many women who are essentially, just as much of a weirdo as me. And yet it's really important to acknowledge that something that often stops people from entering the alchemical space of sisterhood is that fear of being judged as a weirdo, as a lunatic, as strange. Has certainly been true for me over the years. It's felt so edgy to enter sisterhood, and yet it's just so vital. Something that I came to see was it's just so vital, and we're speaking to more of that. But ultimately, what's interesting as I was reflecting on this topic is how it's also always been a part of my gift to bring women together. Like, it's also always been a wound, so I'll share more about that. But it's so vital that when I was creating and living into creating the archetypal apothecary path, which is the path that I serve to help secret witches to liberate their witch and express themselves fully, like, one of the 8 elements of the path is sisterhood. And that's because it is so vital. And we kind of brush it to the side when we're thinking about, we've come here, we're a secret witch. Like, we can often think, oh, well, it's okay, I'll just be magical and witchy over here on my own. And there's a beauty in that as well, in that we can kind of learn to be independent. We can learn how to trust ourselves. And if we want to bring that magic into the world in a way that impacts others, or even just for our own healing and in terms of relationships, there is a journey to be had with sisterhood that can really help us to fully be able to express our magic. And this is something that I've learned based on my own journey, but it's also why all of my journeys are centered around community, whether that's, the community here with our podcast, having a Secret Witch Sisterhood group, or whether it's like our group journeys or something that I'm about to birth for this year that's coming through me at the moment. Like there's a real importance to having sisterhood. And I'm going to explore more about why that is in a moment, but just know that sisterhood is vital. If you're thinking about wanting to embrace your healer witch and become a magical woman who's maybe helping others heal and living your destiny as a healer, or even just for your own personal healing, this is vital. I can't stress that enough. And that's whether you're doing something with me or whether you're finding sisterhood in another way. Like it's just important. And it's something that I've always centered my journeys around. And you can trust me, that has not always been easy. It's not always been something that's easy to hold other women in their triggers, in their wounds. And yet I choose that because of it being so vital. I also love it. Like I feel deeply honoured when a woman shares with me what's coming up for her, and just has the vulnerability and the courage to be able to go into the alchemy and feel fully held. Like there's something so magical and so nourishing about that. And yet the important point is, like, this isn't always easy. Sisterhood isn't always easy. And I share that because we can often have this perception that we should only choose what feels good. And in my reality, my experience, and that of the experience of many women that I've guided, particularly into their gifts, because our gifts often come in through our wounds and so often likely won't feel easy to access, is that soul doesn't always call us through things that feel easy. In fact, it calls us through initiation. So it's important to know before we dive into like sisterhood, because there can be a resistance around sisterhood. So that in itself is helpful to illuminate. So notice, just as you're easing your way into this episode, just notice how you feel about sisterhood. Like when you think about the idea of sisterhood, what arises for you? Like, are there resistances? Are there fears? Or is there a sense of, oh, I don't need that? Is there a sense of, oh, that's scary? Or, what comes up for you when you think about the word sisterhood? What does it mean to you? And there may well be some stuff in there that's even just helpful to begin to unpack and illuminate for yourself. And that is, even this episode is going to be healing for you around that. There's, at the moment, as we speak, as I'm recording, so this will be complete in January as this goes live. But at the moment, as I'm recording, we are in the middle of our journey with Luna, our archetypal remedy Luna. And we have gone deeper than any other crucible I have ever led. And each time I think that's the case. Like each time we meet in circle and we build that community, and there have been women who have journeyed together for a little while now, and also new people coming in who are being also feeling like that nourishing sisterhood that we've created. And it just astounds me really, because often there can be this perception that meeting online can't be as healing and nourishing as meeting in person. And there is like a personal preference piece to this as well. But it's always astounded me that the work that we do even online actually really creates like an intimate space. And what I will say is that many women reflect that back to me and say, I didn't expect to be able to go this deep online. But there's something about this, and I was contemplating it just before I pressed record, in that even though we're online, it really does become this deep and intimate space. And I'm contemplating that perhaps that's also because it's almost even easier in many ways to share ourselves online compared to when we're face to face. That's something that I've noticed in my own journey as well. And so often online can always be that stepping stone into then going face to face and owning our magic there, which is all part of the work that we do. And there's just such a gift. I feel so honoured to be part of that, to be part of that kind of holding space. Like my heart is so full at the moment of just like being with the women to hold space for them to be able to heal and learn to heal themselves. And there is a very different, unique kind of space that I'm creating. And I'll share more about that, because I always get comments on how magical the space is in our containers, even in comparison to maybe other spaces that women have been. But it really is like this sacred, special place for women to learn how to heal themselves. And what I mean by it being kind of unique, women have kind of often reflected this as well, through their sharing of like how they didn't maybe expect to get the access to the depths, and just like the safety and the uniqueness of our container, because and it's intentionally created like that, I will just add. So it's unlike many other sisterhood experiences, because often, traditionally, women's circles have been a place to simply hold space for people to express. And that is very much the truth of our container as well. Like, there is a space for people to express if they want to. But there's almost like a deepening and an additional layer in our journeys, in the Secret Witch path, in the Archetypal Apothecary path, that invites us into like witnessing and holding and expressing, but also not just being with that and not just saying, okay, there's like this coming up for me, but it's like going into a deeper layer of alchemy that helps us to reclaim the gold within whatever it is that we're expressing. Because often what we're expressing can be truth, or it can also be wounding. And what happens in many traditional women's circles is there's just like an allowance of expressing, which is so valid, so important to be with what's here, like the pain, the darkness, the difficult emotion, the trigger, whatever it is we're expressing, we hold space for that. And in our containers, there's also a conscious, intentional reclamation of the gold within that darkness that is often not found in many other women's circles and women's spaces. So there's like an expressing it, but also then an allowing ourselves to enter an alchemical process of self-reflection that helps us to recount the gold that's within this darkness that we're expressing, even if we feel like a victim to whatever is coming up for us in the moment, or we feel like we can't change it. Like, there is always gold to be reclaimed. And I think that's almost like what is so powerful in comparison to maybe other women's circles, is finding a space where we can find the gold, we can find what's here for us, maybe the shadows, the wounds, the deeper self-illumination, as well as the expression in what is arising for us to see and love. And that's something that's very intentionally created in my spaces. And it's really so important within that to create a container of loving truth that facilitates our healing. So I guess the point of sharing that is like, when you're looking for sisterhood, and this, you know, this isn't to say come join our sisterhood, this is really for you to live into. It's like, what do you want? Like, what do you want from a sisterhood? Like, remember, we are the powerful creatrixes of our life, and we want to contemplate, like, what is it we're wanting from a sisterhood space? So it's another good reflection, a question, if you want to pause and just feel into, like, what would a sisterhood space offer me? What am I hoping to create and receive from a sisterhood space? And I'm going to share more about the Secret Witch and sisterhood, because so go into that inquiry if you want, and then I'm going to share more about this now, because most Secret Witches fear sisterhood. And so whilst there's an element of like, we'll come here to express what's coming up for us and be held in that, there's also an alchemical, transformational healing that's available within sisterhood. And that is the healing of the witch wound, essentially. And most Secret Witches will have this show up in some way. So they might, for example, if this is you and you're listening at home, the way that it showed up for me as well, is that if we're a Secret Witch and we're kind of having some kind of fear or resistance around sisterhood, it may be a call from, it may show up as a call through things like having had challenging relationships with other women. Like, that's a call into sisterhood, into a healing sisterhood, to learn to hold ourselves in a community. It might show up, a call to sisterhood might show up through mistrusting others. That could be both women and men, often there's a sense of, in women who come here as secret witches, of like really not knowing how to trust others. Maybe they've been wounded as a child in relationship to others. Maybe they've been bullied, or somebody's kind of done something that's had them doubt that they're able to trust other people. And there's also another way this can show up for secret witches in particular. And I think this is a really vital one to express, is that often there can be this sense of like really mistrusting guides for secret witches. So maybe women have had perhaps a bad experience of working with a healer or a coach. That is quite common when women arrive at my space. There's a sisterhood wound in that as well, particularly if it's been a woman, but also if it's been a man, there can be this kind of sense of mistrust of guides, and that is also available to be healed in sisterhood. And it can also show up through like an avoidance or a resistance to deeper intimacy with others. So we might notice that if we have like relational issues or a theme of relationship showing up as our wounds, like this can be another call into sisterhood, because these are the things that sisterhood help us to heal. And when I say that, what I mean is these are the things that are going to help you heal yourself in sisterhood. Because that's another thing that I'm very clear about in all my work, is I'm not here to heal you. Sisterhood offers you the capacity to have other people as mirrors, as a way of healing yourself. I'm going to talk a bit more to that. But ultimately, these are the ways that a call to sisterhood can be calling us. And it makes sense that we would avoid intimacy, that we would experience relationship challenges, that we would mistrust guides, we would mistrust others, women and men, that we'd have challenging relationships with other women. Because if we are called to being witches, it's likely we have some version of the witch wound playing into like this pattern that's showing up around maybe feeling, oh, sisterhood's feeling edgy. And the witch wound will be kind of already ingrained in ourselves, carried through our DNA, through epigenetics. Like we will feel the wounds of our ancestors who really weren't safe in community at that time. They would be being their magical selves, and other people would maybe kind of rat them out for it, and then they would be burned at the stake. And so that kind of fear of judgment, of being outed, of being burned at the stake for being our true selves, can be ingrained in the secret witch, and can be carried down through our DNA, through epigenetics, how our genes are impacted and then passed down. And this makes it hard for a secret witch to show up authentically. This is a common call to sisterhood, is this sense of like, oh, I can't be myself, because what if I'm judged? What if somebody thinks I'm a lunatic? What if somebody thinks I'm weird? What if I'm outcast? There's this sense of not being able to be our fully magical selves. And so what I will say is, if this is you, like this journey of even just entering sisterhood can take deep courage. Like it's not something that's just like a flippant, oh, I'm just going to join a sisterhood. Like this is something that wants to be chosen consciously and intentionally. And we need to have deep courage to enter. Because maybe until now, we've been used to being isolated our whole lives. Maybe we've had challenges with others. Maybe we've been bullied in childhood. Maybe people have judged us and made us feel unwelcome. Maybe people have cancelled us and rejected us. Maybe we're also used to other dynamics of like learning to people please. And so when we're in that people pleasing dynamic, we can't show up fully for ourselves. We might be in a sisterhood even, and then start to rescue others because we're so used to like outsourcing, giving away our energy to other people and ignoring our own emotions, our own journey. We might feel as well because of that our energy is being obliterated by this. So we learn to hide away from other people rather than being in sisterhood. There's often a fear for the secret witch that once we enter sisterhood, our energy is just going to be like obliterated, that we're going to just be giving out to everybody else. And this is all part of, like, that could be healed in sisterhood. This is all part of the call to sisterhood. Is this, if we're feeling like, oh, no, I'm just going to stay over here and just be on my own because my energy is too, like, I need to protect it. That is all a call to sisterhood. So if you're feeling burned out, that is a call to sisterhood. And the secret witch is used to hiding herself because of all these patterns that show up. She's used to rejecting sisterhood, to not being in sisterhood. And I guess one of the vital things is that when we look back ancestrally to ancient times, and we think about how medicine women operated, they didn't operate always in isolation. There's a kind of, there's a balance here. Like we still want to work our own magic. And there's also, we think about women in ancient times, there's also a sense of village. There's a sense of like the feminine operating in a village. You think of women giving birth to children and being surrounded by this community, which we just don't have when we birth children in our modern society, because our modern society has become masculinized. It's become like almost like segregated into different funnels. We're like little silos operating alone. And the masculine is actually wired to operate in that way. We think of ancient masculine, they were the hunter-gatherers. They would go out on their own and they would like gather the thing, come back to the village for us to provide for the feminine. And so the masculine is wired for a vision quest. They're wired to go off on their own in isolation and operate that way. And that's been something that's come through our culture and been how we've learned to operate, because it's a very masculinized culture in our modern world. And so really, we are being called, particularly if we're here as secret witches who are here to be healers, we are being called to remember the ancient feminine wisdom. And part of that is learning how to operate in community, learning how to operate in a village and bring back that community wisdom. And there's really an alchemy that I see happen in sisterhood that's really actually quite challenging to put into words. The alchemy of being in a group of love and support, and others, particularly maybe loving parts of us that we have found difficult to love and accept and welcome ourselves. The one thing I see over and over is how women come into our community and they will really kind of start to be brave and lean into their soft edge at a tender pace. Like, there's no rushing this. Like, they will lean in softly and maybe share aspects of themselves that feel edgy, and their soft edge I always invite them to meet, but like sharing some parts of themselves that maybe they've not shared with other people, parts of themselves particularly that feel shameful, that they don't feel they can love about themselves. And the alchemy that happens as they share that, and other women love them in it, like for something that they've shamed themselves for, they start to see, oh, I've been shaming myself for something that other people actually can love me in. And love is where the healing is. When we talk about healing, self-healing, what I'm really talking about is loving ourselves back to wholeness. So the sisterhood allows us to really begin to start to welcome and love parts of ourselves that we have outcast ourselves. So, there's that reflection of sisterhood feeling outcast. What we're really talking to here is that actually we have outcasted parts of ourselves that we can begin to welcome home. And community sisterhood is vital in that. Because the other thing about this, and this is something that's a big, big part of my modality and the archetypal apothecary path, is that I believe we are all here to be remedies for each other. People are remedies. We each have our own unique remedy for the world. So if you're a secret witch who's like, I'm here to live my destiny, I'm here to help others heal, that's because you're a remedy. You have your own unique remedy to serve into the world. And part of the work that I do is helping women to discover what that remedy is. But if you imagine it as like, I've heard it described by Adam Quiney, who's been on our podcast. If you want to listen to the bit about gift reclamation, I loved his episode. He talked about this like light bulb that's got its own unique colour. And that's like blinking its way out into the world. And that's your remedy. Like, you are a remedy for others. And what I mean by that is there's a universal healing principle, law, called similia similibus. And what that means is that like cures like. So you have your own unique remedy that is medicine for those who are like you, those others who are similar to you. So when we gather secret witches into a group who are similar, there's so much medicine and remedy that can be shared through you, through your share. Your share will activate others into discovering something for themselves. We're mirrors for each other. And this is how archetypal remedies work, really, is we are mirrors for each other. Archetypal remedies are mirrors for us. And so as we share ourselves, it will help other women to begin to reclaim the same aspects that you're sharing. And so triggers, even from others in sisterhood, that we navigate with love, help us to love parts of ourselves that we have shamed. We are mirrors for each other. And there are also gifts in our wounds as we are mirroring those things for each other. So sisterhood helps us to reclaim what's being reflected. It's like an alchemical cauldron that helps us to discover our gifts. So as we start to share maybe some of the experiences that we've had that feel dark, that feel shameful, that we feel guilty about, we begin to peel back and look at the gold that's in that. Find the gold, find the gift. This is a way of us discovering our gifts. So sisterhood is like an alchemical cauldron that helps us discover our gifts in the reflections, in the sharing that is going on. And others will reflect that back to you. So really, when we're talking about discovering our gifts, again, sisterhood is so, so vital to that journey, to the journey of healing, to the journey of discovering our gifts, to the journey of learning how to express. These are the three elements, the three things that we have to journey with in order to live our destiny as secret witches, or as healer witches, and heal and alchemize our secret witch. And sisterhood offers us, for example, self-illumination of patterns. I'm trying to think of some of the ones that have come up in, say, Luna or other group journeys that I have guided women into. Because what it does as sisterhood is offer us a space to go into self-illumination of our patterns around how we interact in a sisterhood or community or with others in relationships. So we might start to notice things like, do we shy away in the face of darkness? Whether that's sharing our own darkness or in the response to other people's darkness. Do we rescue others over processing our own emotions and what comes up for us in other shares? Do we judge and persecute others? And what does that reveal of ourselves? Like, do we feel jealous? Do we feel, some of the emotions that we shame? Do we shame our true selves and hide? Do we seek out validation from others? Do we feel that we can't show up, having this sense that we're too much in our fullness? Like, do we shy away from shining our light? Do we second guess ourselves on what we want to say? Do we doubt ourselves? Do we lack confidence to really lean in and share what's in our hearts? Do we close ourselves down to learning? Do we feel inadequate and unworthy? Do we shy away from sharing our voice and our wisdom and our reflection? And why? Like, the most important question that we can do is we start to notice, it's the way we interact with sisterhood rather than the sisterhood itself that is often the most healing thing. What I mean by that is, like, we can go up and show up in a sisterhood and not say a word and not really learn an awful lot from it. In the traditional women's circles, like when I think about when I've been to a traditional women's circle and not shared a thing, like, that hasn't really taught me a lot because I haven't had the layer of deep self-inquiry. But what sisterhood offers in the way that I guide women into it is a reflection on what's coming up around even sharing in the sisterhood. Like, what's the blocker that comes up as we are in sisterhood? How are we in relationship to sisterhood? And sisterhood helps us to know ourselves intimately in relationship to other in this way. And that is healing for ourselves personally, but it's also essential for those of us who want to become healers for others. And so I also see sisterhood, and this is another reason why it's so vital, is that it offers us a space to hone our practical skills as the medicine women, the true healer witches that we've come here to be. And by that, there was something that came up in a group this year around, like, how we offer reflection in a sisterhood. And I think, again, this is very much baked into the way that I guide women. But like, I do it intentionally because for me, creating a space of sisterhood is really creating a space for which people learn how to navigate being healers, becoming healers. So there's like a practical skills element to it. So by that, I mean, often what can happen for healers and how we've learned to interact innocently with healers is through the mainstream masculine model of how we've learned to interact with doctors, aka we take our problem to the doctor goes, okay, it's this, this and this, go away and do this. That's what I call advice. And we often kind of innocently learn to interact with healers in this way as well, because that's just how we've always known to interact with our healing. And yet in my worldview, what's actually more helpful is to interact with people, sisters, healers, even doctors, in a way that's more self-illuminatory, self-reflective. And so in particular, baked into our sisterhood spaces, I intentionally invite people to learn how to reflect rather than advise. In other words, that's how we become a true healer, is to learn how to offer reflection and to reflect for ourselves. And so many healers have innocently learned to advise, to tell people what to do, to go, oh, okay, I think you should do this, rather than inviting us into our own healing wisdom. And this is what my work is all about, and what sisterhood offers us if we consciously and intentionally harness it in that way. And that can be done, not just in my community, but we can take this into other communities and start to notice, like, what can I learn from being in this sisterhood about myself? But ultimately, there's like an advice versus reflection piece. And advice tends to take us away from our own innate knowing, our own wisdom, and puts us back into outsourcing our power with people saying, I think you should do this. There's advice versus reflection. I'm going to break that down just a little bit more because I think it's such a vital thing to talk to. But again, in our path, our circle space and remedies are there to help us go inwards and self-heal by attuning to our inner wisdom. And that is so vital in sisterhood. Like, sisterhood is so vital to that process. And this is all about learning how to reflect rather than provide advice. So when this is done well, it offers people as remedies. Sisterhood offers people as remedies. And that's what, in our sisterhood space, women learn, guided and supported by me, to own their healing wisdom and offer powerful reflections. In other words, to own their own remedy in a way that activates others to be able to see things for themselves, guiding people into their own wisdom, not telling people how to heal, which is not what I'm doing, but prompting them to heal themselves through reflective questioning and self-illumination. Offering questions, in essence, that bring people into self-illumination. And of course, we don't come to this space knowing how to do that. This is something we learn to embody as we kind of learn to experience it for ourselves in sisterhood. And we learn how to begin to offer reflections and own our wisdom as a reflection. And this is really the true art of self-healing. And also, just a caveat before I dive into sharing different examples of this, is that there's no wrong making in this. Because often we can hear in what I'm saying now, oh, that's wrong. The masculine is wrong. We shouldn't be outsourcing, blah, 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 blah. That is not what I'm saying. There can be a place for both. For example, emergency medical care. We want to go in and we want to have advice or recommendations from a doctor if it's going to be something that's changing our life and saving our life. Like, there's a real benefit to the masculine advice in that respect. The way we interact with that advice can still be I'm going to make a choice based on what I think now or what I feel now. That advice can still be helpful. It really depends what we want to consciously and intentionally choose. And as we're healing in the magical self-healing lens, it's often more helpful to interact with things as reflective self-illumination. So I'm going to give you an example of, and break down advice versus reflection, just as a kind of sowing the seed here. But in essence, the advice definition is guidance or recommendations offered from an expert with regard to prudent future action. And that kind of feels like there's a kind of one size fits all solution in that. It's like, here's what to do. I'm going to tell you what to do. And often that will be sought out because that's easier. There's a kind of relief in being told what to do. So it's interesting because there's so many benefits to advice, and yet what it's really doing is taking us out of our wisdom if we don't interact with it in a way that is learning to see that advice is something that we can choose into. So examples of advice could be, you should do this. This is what worked for me. I think this. These are great examples of where we might be receiving advice. And it's helpful in sisterhood as well, at times, to offer that. But it's also interesting to note the difference. So reflection, definition, is the image of something in a mirror, aka mirroring something to someone to help them access something of their own wisdom themselves. And this is what archetypal remedies do, which also you all are. And an example of this is, I'm hearing you share this. Does this feel true? So it's like mirroring, reflecting back what you've heard them say so that they can start to inquire. I wonder what you sense about this. I'm noticing this theme coming up for me in your share. What do you feel? My inner little girl feels this when I read your share. What comes up for you? These are examples of reflection that help people to enter their own inquiry, to access their own wisdom. And just take that in for a moment and just see if you can feel the difference between the two. Like, how does that feel in your body to receive advice versus reflection? Because our body is our compass, our body is our guide. And it's just helpful to begin to notice that. And reflection ultimately will guide you home into your own wisdom. And that's also very helpful in sisterhood. Sisterhood is a safe space to begin to embody this reflective practice, this way of being a reflective and magical healer. So that's important to share. The other thing I wanted to speak to is my own experience of sisterhood, because part of the reclamation of our feminine, which is ultimately also the work that we're in here, is being, in that village. And I was thinking back to my own experience of this, because I do realise that sisterhood can feel so edgy. Like, we can sometimes feel the call to sisterhood, but also simultaneously feel all the fear of sisterhood, that sense of like, I'm going to be burned at the stake, I'm going to be judged, I'm going to be outcast, I'm not going to fit in, I'm not going to understand, whatever it is that's coming up for you when you think about sisterhood as a fear, like that makes sisterhood edgy. And I have journeyed this myself. Like, I remember going into my first sisterhood. I mean, I've been in many, many sister circles and not said a word. I've been in many sister circles and kind of like, felt like I can't share. And sharing is optional, by the way. Like, even just joining and being in the sisterhood, showing up is so powerful, what we learn from that. There's also so much more that we learn as we're able to start to tenderly lean in and actually start to engage as well. And it's been my own journey that's been the case. But I remember particularly being in a feminine circle where it was important, like, and actually compulsory to share. And that was so edgy for me at one point. Being a witch, having all the secret witch wounds, like, I had shut down to sisterhood. I never felt that I fitted in with others. I'm also autistic, so I had spent a great deal of my childhood playing on my own, really avoiding other people, especially women. And I had so much fear, so much doubt, so much shame. I was terrified of actually entering sisterhood. And I really had to learn through that process to vulnerably open my heart and how to vulnerably open my heart. I remember having it reflected to me by one of my guides in sisterhood that I had gone into closure. And I had no idea that that was what had happened until I started to, and having that reflected by the guide and other sisters, that I was in closure and that there was love there for me. Like, I remember just feeling like there's no love here for me. Like, absolutely no love. I feel like you're not seeing me. I feel like you're not hearing me. There's absolutely no love here whatsoever. And the reflection was from the guide and one of the sisters in the group was like, there is so much love here for you. It's just you're not learning how to receive it. You're not opening your heart to receive it. And in that moment, it reminded me that I had a choice and I could open my heart. And I chose in that moment to open my heart. And it revealed all the ways that I had been shutting out sisterhood, shutting out love. And there was so much healing in that journey. But I do know, that's why I know it takes so much courage. We have to come into sisterhood with the intention of healing, because it can offer us triggers at times. And those triggers are really there for us to collect the gold from, to collect our gifts from. And this is really, when I'm talking to this, I'm talking to like the deeper levels of like a deep container that was in a very deeply held container where it was compulsory to share. That can be quite a lot more intense. So if you're just starting to think about this, you might want to go somewhere where there's like optional sharing. I do remember as well, though, a great example of triggers and gold that I love this story was we had an invitation one day in sisterhood to share what we loved about other people, what we admired about other people, and what we were jealous about other people. Actually, that was the cue. Like, what are we jealous of about others? And I remember being like, oh, cool, I'm going to see what people are jealous of. Like, this is very exciting. Like, I'm going to be, this feels juicy. So I was like, giving all my reflections out. I'm jealous of this. I'm jealous of that. I remember all that I kept receiving from all the sisters was, I love Nicole's lipstick. I was like, hang on. Like, I love Nicole's red lipstick. I was like, is that all I am? I felt so unseen. I felt so unheard. I felt like people had completely skimmed over like the deeper things that I feel I represent. And they were like, I love your lipstick. I'm like, that is so fucking superficial. Like, why do you love my lipstick? Like, is that all you've got for me? Like, is that all you're jealous of? Like, I'm clearly like worthless because all you're seeing is my lipstick. And that could literally, like, anybody could just put that on. And as I opened to sharing that trigger, which took so much courage, I probably would not have shared it if I hadn't asked for the support of my guide at the time. Like, so I do feel you, like there was a deep holding in that, being able to share. And I remember sharing, like, I feel really triggered because all you have seen is my lips. And that doesn't feel very deep. That feels really superficial. And what got reflected back to me in that from the sisters in the group was that my lipstick represented to them that I was fully soul expressed. Like, to them, they were terrified of wearing red lipstick and like being judged for it, being judged as too much. And they saw it as a representation of how I freely expressed my soul, of how I showed up, just fully expressed. And I was like, oh, they haven't missed me. That is my gift. You can see it's my gift because it's what I help women reclaim. But as you can see, like, I felt like they weren't seeing my full expression. And that was the wound. And so this is a great example of how there can be gold reclaimed in sisterhood that otherwise would have gone unfound. It would have stayed buried. And this is what I mean. There are so many benefits to sisterhood. This, like, space to liberate our witch wound, to heal our inner witch's fear of her power, magic, and truth. Space to share our voice and practice that being safe in a world where it maybe doesn't feel like it is a secret witch. It's a space of love and connection that mirrors back to us what we can't see for ourselves, like our shadow, our wounds, what's really deeply lovable about ourselves in that. It's also a focused space often to create space and time to connect to your witch in a busy life, because I know that can be something that comes up for women, is this sense of like not having time and space for our witch. And often when we're journeying alone, it can be like, oh, well, I'll just put that off and I'll do it later. I'll come back to creating a ritual later. I'll come back to pulling some cards later. I'll come back to working my herbs later, or whatever it is. Like, there can be a sense of like putting off. But when we have other sisterhood, there's like a sense of almost like accountability in that. There's a sense of like, okay, we're going to show up in this sisterhood, and it keeps that focus. It keeps that, it's like a space being carved out intentionally. A space for healing and deep diving into self-illumination, which of course, if you're listening, I'm sure you love like the deep work. It's quite addictive. And a space to work with energy healing. In our spaces, at least, it's very much around learning to work with your inner apothecary. It's also a space to learn how to manifest, because we learn about where our focus goes. It's also, most importantly, perhaps a space to tenderly, slowly begin to walk the path of becoming a healer, whether that's for ourselves or others. And a safe space to ask questions, a safe space where all of you will be welcome, which is healing in and of itself. It's also a space to harness magical ritual and ceremony, a space to go deeper, a space to share all of you, and a space to liberate those parts of you that feel tempted to hide. So this is what's so vital for Secret Witches. And it's so vital, in fact, that I've had many women say, when they're in our group containers, our archetypal remedy journeys over the last year, which I've served 4 over the last year, which are super vital remedies. But as I've been working with women in that, I notice how when we come to the end of container, they're often like, we want this but longer. We want this but more. Like, can we have this ongoing to be that supportive space? And so I've been really feeling into like responding to that desire of women and feeling into what's aligned and feeling into what's going to be most serving for women moving forwards. And I'm super excited to share that I am working on something very exciting for this year that will provide this space ongoing, this space of sisterhood and conscious intentional sisterhood. So when I'm contrasting that, we have our Facebook group, but that's not very kind of intentional in many ways. It is intentional to a degree, but this is like a deepening what I'm thinking of creating here. It's a very intentional journey and process through working with our archetypal apothecary remedies and sisterhood and healing and something new that I'm creating as well as part of it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that just briefly, because I'm right in the middle of birthing a membership that I've been asked for by some of you, which is going to be a space of loving, welcoming, healing that's here for us to harness consciously, harness intentionally, learn how to become a healer for ourselves and others. And I'm really kind of in the middle of channeling like how this will look as I record. In January, I might have more details, but I've kind of put as much as I can into a page at the moment so I can share that with you at the end. And what I will say before I go into sharing a little bit more about it is that this isn't necessarily something that you need to join. It's something that I invite you to feel into whether it feels aligned to join, feels juicy. Because there are always other options. There are always, whether it's something with me or something with someone else, there's always something available that will help you. But the way that I journey with sisterhood is very conscious and intentional, very intentionally designed in alignment with magical healing universal laws and principles. So everything I've spoken about is woven in to the work that I do for the reasons that I've shared. And so at the moment, how I'm seeing this membership look is that it will be focused around a quarterly archetypal remedy journey where there will be one ceremony a month, a healing ceremony at new moon for 90 minutes, serving an archetypal remedy. And that's to activate and initiate your healing for some of the more common surface wounds that healers need to heal in order to be their gifts. And there will be many different remedies that we explore and journey with. But ultimately, that's like a healing circle, a healing ceremony each month. Then I foresee there also being like a monthly witch clinic. And this is something I'm really feeling excited about. It's like a sharing circle where I'm seeing that there's like a gathering of full moon to almost like release what's coming up for us, release what no longer serves. And it's kind of like a drop-in spot healing. So I will be there to provide support and guidance on what remedy you need to work with for your self-healing. Now that might be to do with the healing that's going on in our healing ceremony, but it might also be other remedies that are coming in. So for example, for those women who have had soul maps and they know what their inner apothecary is, that's a kind of supportive space for you to begin to say, okay, this is what's coming up for me, and get some guidance on that, get some kind of healing, like pinpoint healing, and recommendations and reflection, if you desire it, as to how to deepen with the remedies for meeting you in whatever's coming up. So this is a sharing circle for you to share what's coming up and get reflection guidance on that, and also sharing your voice and your heart if that's what you desire. You're also welcome probably to share that in writing, and I can respond to that, although there's also going to be a Q&A around that as well. So there will be also a monthly or fortnightly, I'm not sure yet, Q&A thread to ask me anything. I suspect it'll probably be fortnightly, to ask me anything about healing and liberating a witch, and see what's coming up in response to ongoing invitations that will also be part of this sisterhood. So this can be anything about healing yourself, anything about liberating your witch and getting support in being a healer. And then, of course, as part of that, there will be ongoing invitations, which is part of our group journeys as well. There will be inquiries, there will be practices and rituals to engage with, to deepen into your witch, provided with guidance as well. And what that will also provide is permission to be your full witchy self. Even if you're using our safe space and membership as a playground. So this is about liberating your secret witch, fully expressing who you are without shame, fear and guilt, and learning to love yourself and heal that shame, fear and guilt. It's a place of magic. It's offering you magic, to be in the magic of ritual and ceremony and the sisterhood and all of the magical healing. So join the witchy party, if you like. It's learning the fundamentals of witchy self-healing art and science, which is baked into all that I do. So it's learning the how to heal yourself magically. So it's about self-healing tools, guidance. There'll probably be downloadable guidance workbooks and videos to help you with liberating your secret witch and creating your destiny as a healer. It's a way of, again, focusing and creating the time and space to connect with your inner witch. And again, at your soul's pace. This is going to be in a very bite-sized way, or you can deep dive if you want to. The choice is yours. It's supposed to help you get clear on your vision and what magic you desire to manifest in life so that you can create from your heart and soul alignment. It's a place of focus, so there'll be live schedules of circles and community support to focus on your witch and create a habit of carving out time, which can be a challenge, and liberating what stops you from carving out time to live your destiny as a healer. It's a space, of course, to connect with like-minded witchy sisters, for empathy, for cheerleading, for encouragement, for mirroring, to help you when you feel like giving up on your dreams. And also the Q&A will be a space of guidance from me. The Q&A, the witch clinic, is very much a space to get guidance from me. So it's all very well like walking the path of being a healer by ourselves, but it's a whole other thing having guidance. So it's almost like having that kind of I was speaking to somebody the other day. It's almost like they were saying it's almost like having like an insurance policy where you're walking the path, but you've also got space to ask questions and get some support. So it's like a whole other thing having guidance in the journey of becoming a healer. Like you get to ask the questions that you're stuck with and have a real human supporting you to illuminate your wisdom along the path. And there'll be like a formula, a way, a structure in place for you to ask the questions that will enable me to then speak to that. But ultimately, that is there for you. It's like having a healing session each month. And it's a way of stopping outsourcing, of stopping searching for the next thing, because often that can be something that comes up for women. And being in sisterhood, fully supported, there's this sense of like being able to stop searching for the quick fix and begin to tune into our wisdom. Learning from me as well, learning from witnessing me as an embodied healer, learning how to be a healer for others. It involves experiencing healing for ourselves in clinic. We have to heal ourselves to become healers for others. And a safe space. A safe space is so vital, where you'll learn that all parts of you are welcome and you can cultivate like an inner safety for your witchy soul expression. So what I'm creating is really like a playground to heal and liberate what's showing up for you around being the true you. There's also reflections. So there's the Q&A is about receiving reflections. And whether you join what I've just shared or not, I guess the point of what I'm trying to say is that I'm creating this because sisterhood itself is so vital. For me, it's about Secret, which is having a community where there's space and guidance to heal, to discover your gifts, to learn how to feel safe, to fully express. These are some of the gifts that sisterhood offers us. And sisterhood often is like the tender first step into the path. It's also a home of deepening for women who've been walking the path for a long time. It's like a practice ground to hone our own healer skills. But ultimately, sisterhood is a space, and particularly the way that I create it, for the creatrixes of the world, and a space for the healers of the world to feel safe, to be yourself, to express your truth, and to learn what holds you back in that. So the way that I'm creating Sisterhood and Circle is a space for secretly magical women who were born to be healers, who don't want to die without living out their destiny and unapologetic magic. But maybe it feels terrifying and we hide, because that is a call to sisterhood. The hiding of the secret witch is a call to sisterhood, whether that's with me or with someone else. That's important to illuminate. And for me, what I want to help women is to learn how to heal themselves in sisterhood. Maybe that's you feeling burned out or having some kind of mysterious physical health symptoms that doctors and mainstream pharma can't explain or cure. Things like chronic fatigue, ME, neurodivergence, anxiety, feminine wound symptoms like endometriosis, autoimmune problems, depression, anxiety. Like, these are the things that we can learn to heal ourselves in the power of sisterhood, through reflections from others, to find aspects of ourselves that we have shamed and shoved down, even simply to heal the dull grey mundanity of a chaotic modern life for those who want more magic. Sisterhood is a space where you can go and learn to heal yourself, to access your inner apothecary. And often, the kind of perfect moment for that is when you think, fuck this shit, I'm going to heal it myself. I'm going to embrace magic. That kind of secret witchy part of you that's like, I'm here for this. I want magic. That is the moment when sisterhood becomes the medicine. Oof. Yeah. That is the moment when sisterhood becomes the medicine. Like, that sense of like, I'm going to heal it myself can often be like a sense of like, I'm going to fight this and I'm going to isolate myself and I'm going to make sure I heal it. And there's a sense of often having explored all the quick fixes by ourselves, when the real medicine is sisterhood and learning that we can heal ourselves, but by working with the world as a remedy, as a mirror, other people as a mirror. This is alchemy. It's also for those who have already embraced the magic of healing. I want to go deeper into learning to be a healer for others. And really, that's all the same thing, because those who are called here to be healers are also firstly being called to step into healing ourselves in this way that I've talked about, through people as remedies, and becoming healers for others too. And it's a space for us that I'm creating particularly to work with our inner apothecary of remedies, to learn how to work with them in an embodied way, and that tender first step of the path. So if you're a secret witch who is wanting to reclaim your magical power, to discover your gifts, to live an unapologetically magical destiny as a healer, to express that into the world, you will need to learn to heal yourself and live your unapologetic magical destiny as a healer. And sisterhood is vital to that, whether it's with us, whether it's somewhere else. Like, regardless for all of it, sisterhood is one of the most important things. And I know that creating time and space can be a challenge for secret witches. So there is also minimal time investment for what I'm creating. Like, it's a membership that's designed to help you to begin to manifest more magic in your life, and therefore guide you to create more space for your witch. So I say that there can be like 15 minutes, 30 minutes a day checking in to get full benefits. And that doesn't have to be every day. You could space that out throughout the week. That's kind of like the time involvement that I see. But ultimately, whether it's this or not, sisterhood is vital. If you are feeling the call to this, then I have just shared a page at the moment to register interest in the show notes. So have a look there and visit nicolebarton.co.uk/membership. And there's a space in that to register. If you scroll down, you can either read about it or scroll down, click the button and register to be the first to hear when this space opens officially. To just speak to some of the common fears that can come up, like there will be different payment levels to make this accessible and meet people where they are. It's my deepest work. I saw recently, like it's my deepest work to make this work accessible, to meet women where we are, to meet all of us where we are. And so it will be really accessible to anyone who feels the heart call to this space, to feels the heart call to sisterhood. If that is you, then no, there will be different options. I haven't shared much about that yet because I'm still kind of fine-tuning the details. But please know, this is accessible to all. And even if you don't choose to join us, the important thing is to find yourself a space that feels supportive. To find somewhere where you feel welcome, where you can, at the very least, begin to express, to begin to share your voice. That could be with us, where you just come in and start to sink in and be with the inquiries and the practices, but maybe you don't feel like you can express yet. Maybe you don't share in the sharing circles, but you learn and absorb from everybody else. Like that is also welcome. Or maybe it's somewhere else, a traditional women's circle, where you just go and start to sit in circle and just feel the magic of it. Sisterhood is so vital to the witch especially, because the witch is so sensitive to other people's energies. And that's why there can be a lot of challenge. So I'm loving you and whatever comes up in this episode for you, particularly go into the inquiry around sisterhood. That feels so serving. Like, what comes up for you in the idea of sisterhood? Like, is there resistance? Is there perhaps not a resistance and you're just feeling like, yes, I love the idea of sisterhood? I'd love to know, so please do share. You can share at the moment in our Secret Witch Sisterhood Facebook group if you want to join that and get a taster for life in there. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there and send you all the love, and I'll speak soon. Mwah. I personally loved this episode. Sisterhood is so dear to me. So here are my takeaways. The Secret Witch is there is nothing so healing as sisterhood to help us learn how to fully express our true, authentic selves. It can help us overcome our fear of judgment and being outcast and other fears we may have around stepping into our gifts as witches. Being able to be intimate with others is important in the journey of becoming a healer for ourselves and in living our destiny as a healer for others. People are remedies and act as mirrors for our own deeper self-illumination, aka loving healing. Safe spaces of vulnerability and reflection are so vital for our healing, especially in a world where we have learned to operate as silos, keeping ourselves disconnected and isolated in our masculinized culture. Sisterhood serves as a space in which we can discover our gifts and practice honing our skills as healing practitioners by offering reflection. There is opportunity for reflection within conscious sisterhood spaces that allows us to access our own inner wisdom, which activates real healing for us, as opposed to advice and quick fix solutions, which take us away from our wisdom. True healing comes from within, facilitated by the supportive environment of a sisterhood that encourages self-reflection and personal growth.